So decarbonization targets are set and regulations will become more stringent, as Eric will touch upon in the next session. But last year, it was a milestone year for the shipping industry because it was the first time that we saw a monetary incentive kicking in through the ETS. And this year, we see FuelEU kicking in. So both focus on usage of fuel on board, but they are not the biggest incentives yet. Still, they have set the wheels in motion. At the same time, we see cargo owners and charterers, they focus more and more on their ESG performance. And all these lead the industry to adopting alternative and low carbon fuels quite fast. But still, we have a long way to go until we have the full energy transition of the industry. There are many challenges to overcome, and one of them is the fuel supply versus demand conundrum, which is not so easy to break. Various stakeholders of the industry are working towards breaking this conundrum, and on the leading front is an organization called ZEMBA that stands for Zero Emissions Maritime Buyers Alliance, who set to accelerate the adoption of sustainable, scalable, and economically viable solutions for the shipping industry. So I'm quite happy and thrilled to have the chance to talk to the CEO and President of ZEMBA, Mrs. Ingrid Irigoyen. Welcome, Ingrid, and thank you very much for being here.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. So I would like to start with a general question. What is the vision and purpose of ZEMBA? Why does the world and the maritime industry need an alliance for the fuel transition?
Yeah, great. Thank you so much. So our vision at ZEMBA is a maritime sector that is powered by clean energy that allows global trade to thrive in the clean energy economy of the hopefully very near future. And our purpose in catalyzing that transition is to essentially shepherd a large group of freight buyers through collective forward procurements that result in multi-year demand commitments for clean new fuels and technologies. By making these multi-year commitments of demand, we give carriers, fuel producers, ports, investors, and everyone else in the value chain who needs to take the leap into these new fuels and technologies, we give them confidence to help grow a competitive market. This creates access for our members to those new solutions that otherwise might not even be available to them. It helps create those new markets, and it also gives our members and the rest of the value chain the potential to start to harness economies of scale right from the start of this transition.
Not so easy tasks ahead of you. And we see different approaches in different segments and ship types. But would you like to share with us, from your standpoint, what is driving the cargo owners to work towards decarbonization?
Yeah, it's an excellent question. Of course, many of them want to live up to public commitments that they've made to be good stewards of this planet while they're also being profitable businesses, commitments that they've made to people, to human communities, and wanting to be part of this clean energy future in a way that is constructive and positive, and that I think consumers reward. But it's also smart business in a much more concrete way. If you're a company who views the economy of the future as one that is powered by clean energy, then a slow transition, a disruptive transition is not what you want. What you want is to enable the transition to be smooth, to enable it to be fast, so that we can achieve scale and get to those economies of scale as quickly as possible. And finally, speaking of scale, the other thing that cargo owners want to ensure is that the right solutions become available in the market as quickly as possible, because with scale comes economic viability. So they want to ensure that we don't get stuck on transition fuels or bridge fuels that cannot achieve the significant life cycle emissions reduction that they're looking for, or those fuels that have an obvious ceiling for scalability because of limited feedstocks. So if we can get the cleanest, most scalable solutions into the market and supported strongly soon, then freight buyers will realize the cost savings of those economies of scale sooner. So it's a very practical mission, but it also, of course, has the bigger picture vision of being responsible stewards of our planet's resources.
And I think we have seen this fast adoption and scalability in the container ship segment, which is also where you focus. Do you think, do you have discussions with other segments as well? Are there key learnings that we can transfer to other commodities as well?
Absolutely. So, of course, we've started in the container segment for what may be obvious reasons. The public-facing companies that have made the most bold commitments related to the clean energy transition, they tend to be public-facing and they tend to use the container segment primarily. So we've started there. But we also have a lot of expressions of interest coming in constantly from ship owners and operators in other segments, from cargo owners in other segments. And so we see a lot of opportunity to expand the project into those other segments. Doing this work is complex already, and so we try to keep only a few variables in motion every time we refine our process. But as we look to the third round, right now we're in our second round procurement, as we look ahead to the next round, we're very keenly interested in expanding into other segments like bulk, potentially tankers, potentially ro-ro, and we'll need to do some serious design work, and we'll need those segments of shipping to provide some input to us. So for those of you who are interested in potentially engaging in that third round, a multi-segment procurement, we'll be keen to hear from those leaders in the industry to see how this could work for them, because the whole point is to help build the business case. So if we can help build the business case for the transition in other segments as well, then we need to do that in a way that is collaborative, and of course we'll meet those needs. But that is certainly our vision.
Great. And since you mentioned the design and your processes, would you like to share how do you assess the decarbonization effort? Does how the fuel or technology matter for you?
So we try to be as fuel and technology neutral as possible, just as a philosophical position to take. You know, we want to set goals and standards and then allow the market and allow technology innovation to thrive and tell us what the best solutions are. And so for our first two tenders, that's exactly what we've done. Except that in our second tender, we've actually narrowed those fuel solutions down to e-fuels specifically. And that's because we see a lot of potential in that category of fuels to become scalable in the long run and really help us achieve our various environmental and societal goals. So a lot of positive perceptions of the category of e-fuels, but also not being specific about which e-fuels it is that we want to advance. We're also very open to other technologies, whether those be battery. We love the idea of wind assist and wind propulsion, wherever that's sort of commercially feasible. And so really trying to be as open as we can to embrace new technologies, provided that they meet our criteria. And those are related to a significant emissions reduction, getting as close to zero as we can. And also, of course, those scalability, because this is a long-term strategy. This is not just about getting decarbonization, credits tomorrow. This is about really setting the industry on a path toward really achieving its goals in 2040 and 2050, and that requires a whole new collection of fuels and technologies to be successful in the market.
Yeah, definitely. And of course, when we talk about bio or electrofuels, it's a matter of the infrastructure that is there and where can you buy, where can you burn the fuel. And there are some schemes in the industry, the so-called biofuel insetting schemes, book and claim, that seem to be promising. Would you like to share your thoughts on those?
Absolutely. So we are big supporters of the book and claim approach, and in fact is something that we use for all of our tenders. And the reason that we think that's so important is that for sectors like shipping, it's very difficult, if not impossible, to align the interests of any specific cargo owner in terms of where they need to ship their goods, when they need to ship their goods, with which carriers they're working to actually move their physical freight. To align all of that, not only across a group of cargo owners in order to close the cost gap for the vessel operator, but also to align that with where fuels may be available, which carriers may be willing to deploy those fuels, which carriers have which vessels. So aligning all of that in reality, in space and time, in the beginning of the transition is virtually impossible. So what we appreciate about book and claim approaches is that they not only allow you the flexibility to decouple that demand from that in terms of the willingness to pay. It allows us to support those fuels, those carriers who are willing to deploy those fuels wherever they need to operate them, whenever they need to operate them, on whatever kind of vessel it is that's available to them, and allow cargo owners from all over the world to essentially pool their demand and channel it into those best offerings. So it's a way of accelerating the transition, and it's really skipping over this mismatch of space and time that otherwise we would see. Of course, we've seen a lot of offerings from carriers already, sort of their proprietary green offerings that we call that as a mass balance approach within their own network. All book and claim does is further decouple while also actually creating more transparency and more traceability for our cargo owners, who then feel more confident in being able to claim those emissions reductions and claim the progress that they have helped make in speeding up this transition. So for us, it's a real win-win-win. Of course, those approaches need to be the highest quality, follow best practices. Provided they do that, we are very enthusiastic about book and claim as an accelerator of this transition and a way to really create new business opportunity.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it definitely can help with faster adoption. Of course, there is a need for quite wide auditing and verification scheme behind it. At this point, I would like to point out that one of our breakout sessions will focus on biofuel insetting. And so after the main stage, whoever is interested can deep dive into that. So a final question for you, Ingrid. So far, we see a lot of voluntary schemes being the drivers for emissions management and focus on emissions. How much impact do you think those voluntary schemes can have, and how do you see them working complementary with the regulatory framework that is becoming more and more stringent?
Yeah, great question, and one that I often get, and is a really important question. So I think we have a few perspectives. One is that voluntary corporate action is tremendously important for sending the right signals and getting new solutions supported in the market as a start. But it's really a start. And if you think about the many, many hundreds of thousands, if not millions of companies around the world that use maritime transport, we can't expect even a majority of those to be willing to pay a premium. So it's really the leaders that are doing this, and they are doing this voluntarily. They are technically savvy. They are future-oriented companies. They're looking not just at next year and the year after that, but decades ahead. They plan to be in business, and they plan to thrive in a clean energy economy. But not all companies are able to do that. They don't have the cash on hand to be able to have that kind of flexibility. So policy is absolutely essential for bringing these solutions to vast scale, for creating an even playing field. And our hope is that the voluntary corporate action by those visionary leader companies will give policymakers some insights, right? We can provide them with lessons learned as we run these procurements, and also give them some inspiration that the corporate leaders of the world really do see this as the future. They want this to be the future, and they want to see that even playing field for the clean new fuels and technologies. And they see a real business opportunity as well. So, being that that inspiration, providing some test cases for the use of these fuels, I think is an important contribution we can make to the policy space. But of course, strong policy support is always important when society is going through a positive improvement that will have a lot of benefits, not just for creating new markets and new businesses, but also for things like human health and well-being. So I would say we certainly need a lot of both, but I have never said and will never say that ZEMBA can do it all. This really is a leadership initiative that is intended to help set us on the right course. And then it is the public sector in collaboration with the private sector that will need to take us all the way to our destination.
Yeah, that's a very positive and practical position.